Robots and aliens. Two creature concepts that have tickled our imaginations for the last 100+ years. The possible discovery of aliens explores the depths of our universe, asking, what are the cosmos capable of? While the possible advent of robots explores the depths of the human mind, asking, what are our brains capable of? Two questions that prove as equally fascinating as they are disturbing. Two questions that clearly demonstrate humans' two biggest curiosities, our minds and the world around us. Since the invention of the camera, humans have been creatively exploring our imaginations by way of film. In fact, the film credited by most as the first film ever was about aliens. 1902's A Trip to the Moon by French creator Georges Méliès was a fantastical story about humans traveling to the moon only to discover an alien species. 25 years later, in 1927's Metropolis, directed by German creator Fritz Lang, our first cinematic depiction of artificial intelligence appears on the silver screen. In both films, conflict between humans and the aliens and robots ensues. Fast forward 52 more years to the year 1979. A space horror film made by an unknown filmmaker at the time hits theaters. Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, caught the public by storm. On an $11 million budget, the film ended up raking in $187 million at the box office, an astonishing return. Exactly 17 times its budget. 2 years after Star Wars completely turned society upside down, the people were craving space stories, and this particular one captured that fear and curiosity we've always had about aliens and the cosmos. The monsters were designed by legendary Swiss illustrator H.R. Giger, a man who gained popularity with his biomechanical art style, a style that blended organic elements with machines. The link between robots and aliens continuously proves to be an unbreakable one. In fact, an android was heavily featured in the story, and unsurprisingly, was an antagonistic force, much like the titular Alien. Giger and the rest of the special effects team that worked on Alien ended up winning the Academy Award at the 1980 Oscars. The world building they established with their design and construction of the ship Nostromo was unmatched. It legitimately felt like you were on board a ship with Ellen Ripley and the gang. The movie is universally regarded as a masterpiece, not just in science fiction, but in cinema as a whole. Now let's jump ahead 5 years to 1984. Another relatively unknown filmmaker, with only a low-budget B-movie horror sequel about piranhas under his belt, debuts a science fiction action horror film about a robot from the future. James Cameron's The Terminator hits theaters like a wrecking ball hitting a foam wall. With a $6.4 million budget, it pulls in $78.3 million at the box office, about 12 times its budget. Starring a little actor you may have heard of, Arnold Schwarzenegger. This casting was far from obvious at the time of production. Arnold, to this point, had only been in extremely low-budget movies as well as 2 Conan the Barbarian movies. Other than that, he was simply that bodybuilder from Austria. James Cameron, however, was playing 4D chess and knew that Arnold was perfect to portray his ice-cold metal monstrosity, and boy oh boy was he brilliant for this. The idea for the Terminator came to Cameron in a dream one night. He saw a metal skeleton rising from flames, and boom! The rest is history. A testament to the powerful wonderment that robots imbued into the psyche of humans. Similarly to Alien, the film was a cat-and-mouse story about a female protagonist having to survive and overcome a monster. Both movies showcased the finest practical effects ever put to film to this point. From makeup to the monsters themselves, these movies were beyond innovative for filmmaking. The man that could directly be credited with the incredible effects done in The Terminator was a man named Stanley Winston. Winston, a failed actor that turned to focus his efforts on makeup, honed his craft at Walt Disney Studios. In 1982, Winston caught his big break with his work on the highly acclaimed John Carpenter film The Thing. Winston was quickly becoming the standard for monster effects and makeup in Hollywood. Unlike Alien, however, the Academy failed to acknowledge and honor James Cameron and Stan Winston's work the way they honored Ridley Scott and H.R. Giger's work. Nevertheless, The Terminator became an instant classic and is regarded by most as a borderline masterpiece and a great example of the wonder of film. Now, let's fast forward 2 more years to the year 1986, when the swan song of these two franchises truly begins to blossom. Fresh off of his success with The Terminator, James Cameron is tasked with following up Ridley Scott's masterpiece with a sequel. You may be wondering why Ridley Scott wasn't given the task himself. Well, Ridley Scott had suffered a poor run at the box office with his 1982 film, Blade Runner. A film modernly considered as yet another sci-fi masterpiece. A film about artificial intelligence, robots, cyborgs, androids, or as referred to in the film, replicants. The film had the misfortune of being released at the same exact time as Steven Spielberg's E.T., a film about a benevolent alien or extraterrestrial landing on Earth. How poetically convenient that an alien flick, a genre that Scott made famous, had sabotaged Scott's robot flick, which in turn sabotaged Scott being given the task of crafting the sequel to his original Alien film. Just another unifying factor in the everlasting relationship between aliens and robots in cinema. Ridley Scott famously said that it pissed him off not being given the chance to make Aliens. Another unifying factor between the Alien franchise and the Terminator franchise is Michael Biehn's inclusion in each cast. In The Terminator, he plays Kyle Reese, and in Aliens, he plays Corporal Hicks, both characters being essential to each plot. In an effort to make a refreshing and unique movie separate from the original, Cameron imbued his sequel with the action elements that made The Terminator such a success. Unlike many sequels, the film picks up immediately after the events of the first film, which created a cohesive and smooth transition into this new story. And, as indicated by the title, this time our badass female lead would be facing not just one, but many of the xenomorphs, a term coined by Cameron to describe the species. The term comes from the Greek prefix xeno, meaning stranger, and the Greek suffix morph, meaning form. For this film, Cameron brought along the makeup wizard Stan Winston to help achieve something truly special. And although they maintained their original design for the xenomorphs and facehuggers, they crafted a truly special and incredible movie monster, the Alien Queen, a marvel of cinematic monsters. Sequels notoriously never match the original quality. In fact, they rarely even come close. Aliens had a Herculean task following up 79's Alien, yet they pulled it off. The masses loved it. On an $18.5 million budget, it grossed $131 million worldwide, 7 times its budget, making it the highest grossing film of 1986. Not only that, but Aliens, like its predecessor, won the Academy over as well. 2 Oscars were given to the film, one for sound and one for visual effects. Sigourney Weaver, for her portrayal of Ellen Ripley, was also nominated. Stan Winston had received his revenge for being snubbed at the 1985 Oscars for his work on The Terminator. But his vengeance tour wouldn't end here. Come along with me as we jump 5 more years to the 1990s. The year is 1991. James Cameron and Stan Winston are back at it yet again with another sequel. This time, it's the follow-up to the original endeavor 7 years prior. This time, they have much more experience under their belts. This time, they have even more technology and money at their disposal. This time, Arnold is one of the biggest movie stars in the world, coming off several major successes, including 1987's Predator, a movie that effectively pits the Terminator against a hostile alien. This time, they are coming to accomplish the impossible: create the greatest sequel in film history. With $102 million at his disposal, about 16 times the budget of his original, James Cameron masterfully crafted the most perfect sci-fi action film ever created. And although that may sound a bit like an objective statement about a subjective concept, you'd be hard-pressed to find a person that disagrees. Terminator 2: Judgment Day hit the theaters in the summer of '91 and grossed worldwide $521 million, over 5 times the budget. When writing the script, Cameron made one of the most brilliant creative decisions in screenplay history. He chose to take the antagonist from the first movie and turn him into the protagonist in the sequel. The cold, murderous robot that haunted our dreams from 1984 was now the hero that we were cheering and rooting for. He also opted to take the female protagonist from the original, Sarah Connor, and to crank her badassery up to an 11. Linda Hamilton was committed as could be to her portrayal of Sarah Connor. She even put on muscle to really sell how hardened and tough she had become from the events of the first film. The biggest innovation that T2 offered was with its state-of-the-art implementation of computer-generated imagery, or CGI, in depicting the antagonist of the film, the T-1000. Originally, Cameron had wanted to include the design for the T-1000 in The Terminator, but because of technological limitations, he opted to exclude it. And thank the cinema gods for this decision, because it led to one of the most impressive movie antagonists of all time. Thanks to an incredible performance from Robert Patrick, combined with the cutting-edge effects for the amorphous shape-shifting T-1000, T2 completely changed cinema forever. We were now officially entering the modern CGI era. In the 30-plus years that followed, we have received countless alien and robot stories, from friendly robots and aliens to evil robots and aliens, from animated films to dramatic films, and everything in between. The endless occupancy of robots and aliens in our minds has been relentless. It all goes back to our fascination with the unknown, our struggle for control of our minds and the world around us, a bond between 2 movie creatures that may seemingly never end, a cinematic bond that is best exemplified in the Alien movies and the Terminator movies. And admittedly, there are several sequels to each of these franchises, but I choose to only count the original duology when examining these franchises. The original 2 movies for each of these franchises are so incredibly strong. The parallels between the two are also fascinating to examine. Both have female badass protagonists that start out being classic damsels but are forced, by the circumstances they are thrusted into becoming the heroes of their stories. Both franchises are science fiction staples. Both franchises took unknown filmmakers and springboarded them into giants of the industry. The debate is never ending on which franchise is better, on which set of films are higher quality, on which monster is more intimidating. And although we have come a long way as a species, 100 years later from a trip to the moon and Metropolis, one thing remains constant: our hunger for exploring the unknown, our fear of the depths of our minds and our cosmos, and our love of robots and aliens.